We have the greatest ever event in Master Duel returning in the Time Travel 2004, and in this video I'm going to show you the deck that I use to get an 80% win streak, basically. I think it was, yeah, it's 8 wins and 2 losses, and one of the losses is ridiculous, and I'll show you that. But I have a very budget-friendly deck for this event, and it's actually a top-tier event deck. You don't want to use the Gadget Loner, honestly, because for some reason they only put 1 shrink in, and yes, I used up all of my crafting points to make everything as shiny as possible. I crafted a third ultra rare Solemn Judgment. I crafted a Pot of Greed, and I crafted 1 extra Koiko. So I'm willing to play this event. Konami, make this a real event. But here's a deck list I use. I'm going to show you some matches. Double Koiko. So this card can be good and bad simply because the loner decks, there's one of them that like summons from the banished. There's actually 2 of them that summon from banished, and you banishing their cards can actually be used against you. But this stops the other top players if you're like higher up in the ladder who are playing like Chaos Sorcerer and Blackluster Soldier, Envoy of the Beginning, because those are like the Chaos Control deck, which is another deck I'll show you here, was also a top tier deck, and so if you're playing good players, you'll want Koiko to stop them from banishing from their graveyard. One Breaker was a staple back then, same with Tribe Infecting Virus. I was using Gemini Elf just because of the feels, but I switched over to Berserk Gorilla. I'm not sure if you really want to play this card in the deck. You actually might be better off just going for a couple of DD cards. In my format in the TCG, I'm pretty sure DD Warrior Lady was limited to 1, but you can play 3 here, and you can play DD Assailant. I remember buying the GBA game and getting DD Assailant in it, and then getting the other 2. And then you can play up to 2 Rotas as well. I kept 2 of the alt art Rotas for the classic format. Yeah, but that would be a really good option as well, since these cards effectively function as, you know, pseudo beat sticks with semi-high attack, but also as removal or forced interaction. Like they basically always trade, right? Your opponent has to remove this somehow with like a smashing ground, etc., or they have to trade into it with their character, right, giving up board presence, and then you just banish their card. So these are good options instead of the Berserk Gorilla, which I'd say is probably better. And then of course you got 3 of each of the gadgets: yellow, red, and green. And then another reason why you'd want to build your own deck, like obviously all of these are like super cheap so far, right, is that you play the Monarchs. The Monarchs are super powerful in these old classic formats. Like Mobius clearing out back rows is insane. I mean, Konami put in a lot of Solemn Judgments in the loner decks, which is unfortunate because stopping the Mobius here with a Solemn is really bad for you. But if you can bait out the Solemns, and I do that in a couple of matches, and then Mobius their back row, you take out their Sekiretsu armors, you force out like rings, you force out books, etc., and you just go like positive on trades with like Mobius. And then Zaborg is also just like, you know, I don't want to say a 2-for-1, but you get a good beat stick on board, and you take out like any big character. If you go up against that fusion deck and they pull out like Gatling Dragon or the twin-headed Thunder Dragon or whatever it is, you take it out with the Zaborg too. It's really good. Pot of Greed, yeah, you probably won't craft this, but I did. I didn't craft it for my first couple of matches, and then I lost. I think the second match that I lost in a row, or it was the first one or something, I lost going second, like, and the guy Pot of Greeded me. And I was like, and I think he Magician to Faith did as well. And I was like, man, like if you get that combo off, you just like win the game. Like you go +4. So I was like, let me just craft this because I do play the Chaos Control deck, and I think I'll show you a replay with that deck as well. 1 Heavy Storm, you should have this because it's legal now in regular standard. Double Creature Swap, I just happen to have 2 from the Legacy packs, but you know, just a super rare craft. This is really good in the gadget deck because if you clean up the board with gadgets and then you trade away one of your weaker gadgets or even just any gadget for a better monster, that's really good value for you. And if you're playing the Chaos Control deck, you also Creature Swap away Scapegoats. 2 Smashing Ground, 1 Snatch Deal because it can synergize with the Mobius. Also, just taking a monster and just going full beatdown mode with the gadgets is also good, like taking away one of their high attack beaters that are preventing your gadgets from going through. 1 MST, limited to 1 unfortunately, and this is the card that really makes the gadget deck shine. I remember Dexter in 2007 Nationals in Canada, that's the one I attended, won the Nationals with gadgets, and he was playing 3 Shrink. I think it just came out, because I know it was an SCG Shonen Jump Championship prize card, and then it came out like recently just before 2007 Canadian Nationals in like another pack. Finally, it was finally reprinted, and I think that's where he got his 3. But yeah, this card just claps everything. They don't expect it, or if you're playing the loner deck, it only has 1. It's just a rare. You just craft 3, and it turns all of your gadgets into like instant positive trades. It's insane. I opted for 1 Book of Moon. I was playing 2, but I think I took out the extra book for double Phoenix Wind Blast, which you can argue is like not great, but I'll explain why. One ring limited to one torrential, double Raigeki break. So the reason you play the Raigeki breaks and the Phoenix Wind Blast is because the card advantage that you eventually grind through your games with, you know, getting all the gadgets through to your hand, you'll have extra gadgets that you may not need to play out, and so getting value off of popping any card, of putting back any card to the top of your opponent's deck by discarding a gadget that you essentially got for free from the card advantage generation is okay. I would argue you probably don't need to play both. I only played like 1 or 2 matches with both of these in my deck. And it was like okay, but I think the Raigeki break is probably all you need, or the Phoenix Wind Blast if that's what you want to play instead. Both are decent. I would say the Raigeki break is probably more versatile since everybody's using loners, and like Raigeki breaking like the critical cards, like Necro Valley in the Gravekeeper deck, etc., can be better than just putting them back to the top of the deck. Whereas if you go up against like the Chaos Control decks, Phoenix Wind Blast might actually be better. So yeah, it's like one or the other. Double Sakaretsu armor. You could play 3, but it is susceptible to getting heavy stormed and stuff like that. But it is the best like attacking, like destroying trap card. 3 and then 3 Solemn Judgments, which you definitely want to play in Gadget because you need to stop critical plays. The extra deck doesn't matter. You can play 0 cards. You're never going to use it. So let's go ahead and jump into a couple of matches, and you can see how the deck performs. Okay, so in this one, we lose the coin toss, and my opponent is opting to go first. Our opening hand here is actually really strong, but we'll see what the opponent is on. So they discard Thunder Dragon, grab 2, so they're probably on the Fusion Loner deck. Yeah, Fusion Gate into the Twin-Headed Thunder Dragon here. So they've used up all their Thunder Dragons, they set a card, and they pass with no back row, and I'm just like, okay, this is amazing value. Snatch, deal away the Twin-Headed Thunder Dragon, normal summon Gadget, creature swap for their face down, and it is a Dokoichi, which is a free draw. Beat over the Gadget, and then set Ring of Destruction. I don't want to overextend because I don't remember if this deck had Heavy Storm or not. And I'm just like, yeah, what can you possibly do here? They hard drew, look at this. This is absolutely crazy. They hard drew Blowback and Barrel Dragon, and then go into Gatling Dragon. I'm like, you got to be kidding me, dude. Like, the only answer to to my board, basically. So I ring it on summon, and I'm like, okay, that's fine. And then they have Dimension Fusion, and I'm like, oh my god, that's even worse for me. I mean, at least I was able to get rid of the Gatling Dragon, but that's the crazy power of this deck and this card. I mean, this card is banned, so no one's ever going to craft this just for this deck. But this is, like, insane, like, busted nuts combo in my opinion for this deck, and I'm like, okay, so I just lose after my amazing turn 1 turnaround. They're gonna end up trying to pop the Dokoichi. Thankfully the Barrel Dragon doesn't trigger it, and then they're gonna try to get back their monster because I think they can OTK me if this resolves. Thankfully they don't get it there either. They're gonna go ahead and Fusion Gate into another Gatling Dragon, and I'm like, holy moly, that's really bad for me. They only get 1, so they can only pop 1 card. They pop the Twin-Headed since it can beat over the Gatling, and thankfully I do get a draw off the Dokoichi. So I did get a little lucky there, but I mean, you can't blame me because the opponent got the busted nuts. But yeah, thankfully their Gatling Dragon, Barrel Dragon, Blowback Dragon didn't absolutely decimate me, and then, you know, they ended up OTKing me. I live with 1200. How could I possibly come back from this? Okay, Smashing Ground takes care of one of the Thunder Dragons. I normal summon the yellow Gadget, grab out green Gadget, and pass turn. And I'm like, I don't know if the opponent knows that if they use Gatling, they have to pop one of their cards if they end up getting 2 heads. So I'm like, as long as they don't get 1 heads here, I'm fine. They end up getting triple heads, which means they have to pop their whole board. They took a while to actually make that decision, but I'm like, yes, they didn't know. You know, that old school knowledge coming in clutch. Unfortunately, I'm starting to draw the gadgets, which is not what you want. You want to search them. You just want really 1 in your opener. But it's fine. I mean, they've gone through like all their bricks, so they should only have like decent draws left in their deck, which is actually unfortunate for me. But yeah, they draw and then they just end up scooping, I guess, because I was going to OTK the next turn. But that was a crazy match, just showing you the explosive power of this loner. But don't expect to draw like that all the time, because that was really a busted nuts for the opponent there. Alright, in this next match, we are going first, and our opening hand is the red Gadget. You always want to open at least 1 Gadget. Unfortunately, we draw a second one, but, you know, that's relatively okay. We're going to be able to thin through our deck very, very quickly and keep up with the card advantage. I set 2 after summoning red Gadget to search yellow, setting the Shrink, which should put in a lot of work, and the Raigeki Break, hoping that they hit that Raigeki Break with that MST, and they do, thankfully. Unfortunately, they have Breaker as well, and I'm like, oh my gosh, well, at least I can save my red Gadget, even though I don't get the benefit of them crashing the Breaker. Or whatever monster they would have summoned by using the Shrink, so that really sucks. But it prevents them from attacking with the Breaker at least, and so that means I save my red Gadget. They set 2 and pass, and I draw Solemn Judgment here. Mobius would be really nice, Playing into a torrential, but that's totally fine. Just going to summon Koiko. Nothing to banish because the breaker is still on the field during the damage step, so nothing to trigger the Koiko banish. They have a breaker in the graveyard. They're going to draw, set, and pass. And I'm like, okay. I think I was going to put crossouts in this deck eventually, but I don't know if I end up doing that in the long term there. So I summon Mobius, and yeah, they have their own torrential, but I'm going to clear out their field because of it. What was their face down? It was a Marshmallow. And we get rid of an ultimate offering, and I'm like, what the heck? So this has to be a loner because again, no one is crafting 3, or it's 3 in the loner deck, but no one's crafting this banned card. It was a very good card back in the day. It wasn't really used all that much, but these days it would be an absolutely insane card. They summon Wall of Illusion, and I'm like, that's fine. I mean, you should be setting that, but you want to do 1,000 damage to me? Sure. Crash a gadget, get it back to my hand. That's totally fine because I can just use it with Raigeki Break and take out your threat in the meantime. Look at the card advantage difference. 6 to what's going to be 3. I have 3 on board already. And whatever monster they have, like, what are you going to do? Evenly match me? That doesn't exist in this format. Yeah, whatever they end up summoning, I could Solemn it. Obviously, I wouldn't do that, though. I could Torrential, or I could Raigeki Break. So I'm going to summon green, get red. I draw a Heavy Storm, which is really good for contingency once I start clearing out my own back row by using their effects, and then clear out my opponents, whatever they end up drawing here. Yeah, really curious that they're just passing. They Tsukiyomi my green gadget, and I let this go through. In hindsight, you could say that that was a mistake. I probably should have just committed to the Raigeki Break there. I don't know why I didn't. I end up drawing a Berserk Gorilla, and I'm like, okay, well, here's some big damage coming through, and then I will Raigeki Break the Tsukiyomi now, so maybe it was worth saving it for the better monster. Maybe that was the game plan, but the opponent's back on 5 cards, so let's see what happens here. Tsukiyomi, man, such a good card from back in the day, flipping down those Magicians of Faith and stuff. But yeah, Raigeki Break comes through, discarding yellow, saving the Berserk Gorilla. The opponent has Nobleman of Crossout to take out the Berserk Gorilla, and that's fine. We trade 2 for 2 there, basically, and I still have huge card advantage. Draw Dust Tornado, which is a really good draw here, in my opinion. I would like to see a Shrink at some point, but that's totally fine. We end up getting the opponent down to 1,500 life points. We still have 7,000, and we have a full back row to protect our cards. You can see why the Shrink here would be like absolutely insane. We're going to clean up the opponent's back row, though, which is another ultimate offering with the Dust Tornado. And then I think this is where the match kind of becomes a little dicey. So I summon red, grab yellow, and unfortunately, this is, again, one of the downsides of gadgets is that they're just very weak. So the defensive monsters can be a bit of a problem, but that's why you run things like Creature Swap and whatnot to get around that problem. And you know, the Shrinks only reduce attack, so you do have to worry about that. I don't want to give them value off of that Spirit Monster again, so I'm not going to attack here. I'm just going to summon out my gadgets and pass. If they flip summon it, it goes back to their hand. They can only summon one other monster. They end up tributing a Spirit Reaper for the Dark Dust Spirit, which would wipe out all of the attack position, or all face-up monsters except for itself. All other face-up monsters on the field are destroyed. So I Solemn it, and now the opponent has nothing. I summon the green gadget and just attack for game. And just like that, the Solemn Judgment comes in clutch there to save my board and keep my gadgets in aggro mode to win the match. Alright, in this next one, we lose the coin toss, and the opponent is opting to go first. So our opening hand here is, okay, the double gadgets do hurt, and this is the risk that you run. You only play 9 gadgets, and I play 41. But yeah, you do run a risk of like opening 2 or 3 gadgets, which would be really bad. Hopefully you don't see like 5 in your hand. That would be like really terrible. The opponent, okay, they're on Gravekeepers, and this deck can be a bit of an issue, but again, the Raigeki Breaks and stuff help. It depends on if the opponent knows when to Solemn Judgment here. The Breaker hurts, so upon summon, before they can get the counter and use it to pop a card, I have to Raigeki Break it. They call the Haunted it, and I'm like, sure, like, whatever. I end up using the Shrink on the Breaker, which is unfortunate. I would hope I could Shrink the Assailant, because if they do get Necro Valley on field, this becomes a 2,000 monster. And undoubtedly they have something like Sakuratsu Armor and stuff, but we draw the Heavy Storm right on time. So I flip up my bluffed Smashing Ground, take out their Gravekeeper's Spy, get rid of 2 Sakuratsu Armors, Berserk Gorilla, take out the opponent's Gravekeeper's Assailant. And, you know, despite that nice sequence there, I'm still technically behind because the opponent's on 3. Well, I mean, they went first. So the opponent is on 3 cards. I'm on 2, but I can start accruing advantage with my gadgets here. If the opponent has another Gravekeeper Spy set, this would be really bad for me. No, it's a Spirit Reaper, so okay. if Spirit Reaper is targeted in any way by a spell or trap, it will destroy itself. The issue is that Book of Moon, if it resolves on the Spirit Reaper, by the time it resolves, the Spirit Reaper's effect won't trigger. So you could book your own Spirit Reaper, as an example. I saved my Berserk Gorilla from the Snatch Steal with the book, though, so that came in clutch. And then I'm going to be able to creature swap away my yellow gadget to get their Spirit Reaper. You can't change the battle position of the monster you take. Obviously, I would want to change the Spirit Reaper to attack position and attack into the opponent to make them discard their final card. Can't do that with creature swap the turn that the cards are swapped. But I can do it now. So I switch it to attack. I don't want to play into a torrential. The opponent, unfortunately, has the one of trap Rite of Spirit to get back their 2500 attack Gravekeeper Spy. The Berserk Gorilla has to attack, so I have to take the 500 damage by throwing myself into it, which is unfortunate. And now I just have to hope to have a way to deal with this friggin' Necro Valley. The opponent summons the assailant here, and again, like people don't read. Like, you should have just taken out one of the gadgets or thrown damage into the Spirit Reaper. Obviously, taking out one of the gadgets would be better. I have to attack with the Berserk Gorilla, so I would have crashed my Berserk Gorilla anyways into your assailant. So, like, why bother taking it out? I draw a Raigeki break here, so I switch my two weaker gadgets, or one of my weaker gadgets and the Spirit Reaper to defense. Keep the green gadget in attack mode. If they want to switch this Spy into attack, I can Raigeki break away the Necro Valley, and it functions essentially as, you know, a shrink, because then they would crash their Spy and lose it. I top deck Mobius, which is super clutch here, just hoping there's no Solemn Judgment, and nope, it's a Ring of Destruction, which I can definitely deal with here, because they're going to take 24. I'm going to be able to pop the Necro Valley, get rid of the back row, and then switch the Spirit Reaper to attack, Raigeki break away the Gravekeeper Spy, and then just attack for game anyways. The opponent doesn't even let me see what the card in their hand is by discarding it with the Spirit Reaper. They just scoop it up, and just like that, Gadgets once again coming out on top. Okay, this match is absolutely crazy. This is when I switched over to Phoenix Wind Windblast. So I draw 2 in my opening hand and 2 gadgets. So not a great opening hand despite going first. I do have Heavy Storm, which can potentially net me a ton of advantage. I set the Shrink, and I set 1 Phoenix Wind Windblast because I don't want to play into a potential Heavy Storm. The opponent ends up using Makuride the Destructor and then playing Call of the Haunted from their hand when this card is destroyed. You could argue that this was a mistake and I should have just let the gadget go. They play Swords of Revealing Light and pass turn. And then this is another potential misplay by me by using the Heavy Storm here, just going for straight damage. You could argue that I could try to build up my board more and see what they have. The issue is, like, these Phoenix Wind Windblasts are actually not great in this position. So, like I was saying, like, after testing, you probably don't need it. They have another Makura the Destructor. So I'm going to Phoenix Wind Windblast it. They set 2 and pass, and this is where I'm like, yeah, this is where the Heavy Storm probably would have been better. Mirror Force is banned for this event, but we top deck Mobius right on time. Do we end up baiting out some big disruption? Yeah, Raigeki break and the Book of Moon. They know that they can top deck the Makura and take out the Mobius, but we put them on nothing now, right? We have Gadget, Beatdown. We just have to hope to top deck into one of our million traps or spell removals, and then hope the Gadget engine does what it needs to do here. So draw phase, we draw Sekaretsu, that's fine. Summon Gadget, get the Gadget, set the Sekaretsu. As long as they don't top deck like another Call of the Haunted, which they can't because it was limited to 1 back then, right? It has to be limited to 1 back then. No? Maybe not in the OCG. I'm pretty sure it was in the TCG though. Makura triggers, and I'm like, no way, you have another call or something. And no, they don't. They set a card and they pass. We draw Sekaretsu, and clearly this guy's on his own deck, so I'm like, Magicians of Faith and stuff here would be really bad. I don't set the Sekaretsu, and I get Morphing Jar, which is really not great for me. So I end up setting 1, passing. Yeah, setting the Sekaretsu first would have been like super nice there. They top deck MST, or sorry, they play MST, and I'm going to just chain my own MST. They use Rhoda to grab a DD Warrior Lady, and that's really good value here. But they summon Koiko, and are going to opt to banish. That's fine. I have nothing for Graveyard Recursion. I don't play Call or Premature Burial, which was legal for this event. But yeah, no back row. So I'm like, okay, Berserk Gorilla should go hard here. I know they have a DD Warrior Lady in their hand. They've got 26 left in deck. I've got 21, so my deck is thinner than theirs. Thinning out the cards that I hopefully need to see, so I can start drawing powerful removal. Set 1 Book of Moon and pass turn. They summon DD Warrior Lady. I end up Book of Mooning it, which again is questionable. They set a card and pass. I think I booked it because I'm like, you were on no spell or traps last time. I'm willing to keep my board healthy. They have a Magic Cylinder for my Berserk Gorilla, which is unfortunate, because the goal was like, attack with this, you banish my Berserk Gorilla, and then I attack with Koiko and banish some stuff from your graveyard, because once I see this, I'm like, you're on your custom deck, you probably play BLS. And if the BLS comes down, like, I'm cooked. So the Magic Cylinder does hurt. The Koiko ends up taking out the DD Warrior Lady. They opt not to banish, so it means that they have the BLS or a Chaos Sorcerer in hand, because, yeah, they got Light and Dark in the graveyard now. I mean, they've always had a Dark with the Makura, but the DD Warrior Lady is is the light that they need. I said Shrink. I should have set Torrential as well, but I'm like, yeah, you need to take out my Koiko because you can't actually deal with the or you can't actually summon the BLS under Koiko because you can't banish cards from your graveyard to summon it. I should have set the Torrential. Obviously, I get punished here for not doing it. They're playing Dark Dust Spirit, which wipes out the field off the Change of Heart, and then they play BLS. I still live here, but it is, like, you can see how good Torrential would have been here, right? Torrential would have just, like, won me the game, basically. Unfortunately, you know, the Mobius here is a brick. I draw Solemn, and I have to hope they play into Torrential, otherwise I lose. If they summon and I Torrential, I might have a chance, and I have a Solemn as backup as long as I draw a character. They summon the Koiko because in this scenario, it's much more likely that I have a Sakuretsu armor for the BLS than the one of Torrential. So that's good. I'm not playing Magic Cylinder. Obviously, Magic Cylinder would also be super clutch here. I draw a Smashing Ground, which isn't great here. I do have Solemn as my last line of defense to stop whatever they have. And I know one of their cards is the Dark Dust Spirit, which is dead in their hand until they have a Tribute Monster. So the Ninja Grandmaster Sasuke there ends up getting clapped up. I draw Breaker, which is 100 points off of lethal. So I'm going to summon Breaker, and I'm like, oh, I'm fine. Dark Dust Spirit in the hand. Whatever they got, as long as it's not like a Snatch Steal, I just shrink it if they can beat over me or something, right? If they set a card, like, sure, hopefully I top deck a monster and beat over them for game. So let's see what they got. Draw a card, and they play Card Destruction. And they discard, obviously, the Dark Dust Spirit and the Lightning Vortex. And I'm like, okay, that's fine. That actually works out for me because I lose my Brick to Mobius and my Smashing Ground, and maybe I'll draw into something half decent. I draw Ring and Raigeki Break. Ring is dead, but it's the discard off the Raigeki Break. They play Ryoku. And I'm like, are you serious right now? Because Koiko, with the, you know, obviously wouldn't be able to beat over the Breaker here at 19. But I'm like, this is literally the perfect card that they need to beat me. Like, this combo of two cards they drew off Card Destruction. Otherwise, I had game, right? I came back from, like, a couple of questionable plays. Because the Ryoku makes me lose the attack and it causes the opponent to gain the attack, my Shrink won't do enough to stop. If it was just lose the attack and then they don't gain the attack, I would have been able to survive. So I take a very close, or sorry, I lose a very close game there. Literally, the opponent gambit in with that Card Destruction into the two cards they needed to win the game. Absolutely crazy. And that's one of the losses that I took.